Retelling stories, improving your creative writing. We're going to look today at turning a piece of recount storytelling into a piece of fiction, something imaginative. How do we take a story that seems like something that is just something that's happened in everyday real life and turn it into something that feels a lot more imaginative? So, the story starter we're working with is remember a time when you were stuck somewhere. It could be real or imagined. Remember a time when you were stuck. How would we take an ordinary story when we were stuck and make it into something creative? Let's have a look at version 1. This happened to me a few years ago. This is when someone in my family died. I had to travel home on a train. I felt stuck being around lots of people. I went into a coffee shop. I ordered a coffee. I paid for the coffee. I left the coffee shop. I went through the barrier to the train. I got on the train. It was busy. I found a seat. I sat by the window. I was really upset because I was going to a funeral. I felt sad because I missed my mum and my sister. I liked to remember us all being together. Suddenly I felt like I was going to cry. Don't cry, I told myself. Then I got home and I got to the funeral. My uncle was the first one there. He said he was sorry for our loss. Then my aunt was there and she said she was sorry. Then the priest came and he said he was sorry. What was wrong with that story? Let's have a think. Well, first of all, oh my goodness, it's a wall of text, isn't it? It's really, really long, one paragraph block text. But actually, there are several jumps in time. And when that's not paragraphed to show the reader, then it really becomes quite confusing. So the first thing I'd want to do is shorten this because there's some extra detail we probably don't need, but I'd like to put it into paragraph order. Now, remember that when we paragraph, we leave a line when there is a change of person, place, topic, or time. So we're going to have a go at that on the next one. This is version 2. This happened to me a few years ago. I had to go to a funeral because someone in my family died. New place. I went into a coffee shop. I ordered a coffee. I paid for the coffee. I left the coffee shop. New place. And later, change of time. I went through the barrier to the train. I got on the train. It was busy. I found a seat. I sat by the window. I felt stuck because I was around lots of people. Change of topic. I was really upset because I was going to a funeral. I missed my mum and my sister. I liked to remember us all being together. Suddenly, I felt like I was going to cry. Don't cry, I told myself. Okay, it's much improved in sense of structure because we're taking the reader with us each time we've changed time or place or topic. But there's a lot that could be improved. For example, a lot of this is telling but not showing. And you can see my video where I explain show versus tell. There needs to be something about this narrator. Who are they? Something about their background. We need a little bit more of who they are. And we need to be shown a bit more about the experience of where they are. Could we have some onomatopoeia, some sensory language? Could we have some adjectives? What could we do to show this a little more and allow the reader to make some inferences for themselves rather than just stating, I went into a coffee shop, this happened a few years ago? Could we just bring the reader with us straight into the story? Well, let's have a look at version 3. I ordered a coffee and tried to smile at the assistant as she asked for my name. I knew any second she'd ask me to spell it, and I dreaded the embarrassment of trying to spell it letter for letter, when undoubtedly she'd still spell it wrong anyway. My mum couldn't stand to name me with anything less than 3 syllables, and here it came. Tony, I interrupted, just call me Tony. Again, I tried to smile and then shuffled awkwardly to the end of the counter. Trying to balance my coffee and trolley, I reached into my coat for the ticket. A small queue of people was forming behind me. Here, I said, and carefully moved through the barrier. Breathe, I told myself. I had plenty of time. I just felt so jittery. I was relieved to have taken my seat at the window. After 20 minutes, the carriage was heaving. There were so many people. The noise and the chaos were setting my nerves on edge. You'll be fine. I could hear my sister's voice. She was always present in the background, the yin to my yang. I didn't feel fine. The journey passed slowly. "You'll be here soon enough." I could hear my sister's warm tones and could imagine being back in our old room. And then it hit me. I bit my lip and tried really hard not to cry. I could feel the wave of grief. I needed to let go, but not here, stuck on a train, surrounded by strangers. Now we've got the topic stuck. By the time when you were stuck, we've got the stuck here on that last line. Um, and there's much more of a sense of this person, isn't there now? Um, Instead of just saying, I went into a coffee shop, I was going to a funeral, the reader doesn't really know this person's going to a funeral. Kind of, they can't really infer that right until the end. In terms of the coffee shop, well, I ordered a coffee and they're writing the name on the cup. Well, that's what they do in coffee shops. So we've got the a sense of where we are, haven't we? We've got the setting. We haven't had to say it. Don't always have to say everything really obviously all the time, as long as it's clear. We've got a bit of background of the mum and her name. She's got an overly long name. There's a few things where she thinks about her sister and her mum. So there's a little bit more about this character and this family. There's also conversation, there's dialogue. There's both external dialogue when she's discussing her name to be written on the cup with the barista, the assistant in the coffee shop. And then there's also the um, dialogue when she's given somebody her ticket, and then there's also the dialogue, the internal dialogue, when she imagines her sister talking to her. She imagines her sister's voice, and also when she's trying to calm herself down. Now remember, the quotation marks always go around the exact words thought or spoken. But what could be improved? Well, to be honest, there's some quite general nouns. And one of the things with description is we always think we have to be descriptive with adjectives, but sometimes actually using very specific choice of nouns can convey a lot of information. Well, instead of a coffee, what kind of coffee? Instead of an assistant, what is the name of an assistant that works in a coffee shop? Instead of just saying coffee and trolley, could we use some adjectives to make this more descriptive? And if we make the coffee sound really hot and the trolley sound really wobbly, could we create a feeling that something's going to happen and she's worried she's going to drop it and scold someone? Instead of a coat, could we describe the type of coat she's wearing so we can picture her a bit better? Instead of a small queue of people, could we make the people, I don't know, frustrated or impatient or pushy to again create that sense of her feeling quite stressed here? When she moves through the barrier, that all seems fine. But what about when she's on the train? She says there were so many people, the noise set her nerves on edge, but there's no real impression of sensory language being used or imagery to pull us into this setting. Could we make more of a feeling of this being really claustrophobic? What's it like on a train when it's really busy? What are the sights that you can see? We've got the journey passing slowly, but could we do something to emphasize how slow the journey is? Maybe we could describe a whole list, a long list of the things that she sees on the journey and the things that she passes. There's a little bit of emotive imagining going on where she's imagining being back in her old room with her sister. Could we have a flashback there to make more of this? And that after old room, sorry, that should be proofread because that should have a full stop. Could we make more of it? Could we have a flashback maybe of the past so we can really picture the relationship between her sister, and her mum? So for me, I think that's what could be improved. Let's have a look at version 4. I ordered a latte and tried to smile at the barista as I gave my name. I knew any second she'd ask me to spell it, and I dreaded the embarrassment of trying to spell it letter for letter when undoubtedly she'd still spell it wrong anyway. My mum couldn't stand to name me with anything less than 3 syllables. Antwer, here it came. Tony, I interrupted. Just call me Tony. Again, I tried to smile and then shuffled awkwardly to the end of the counter. Trying to balance my scalding coffee and my wayward wheeled trolley, I reached into my parka for the ticket. A small queue of impatient commuters was forming behind me. Here, I mumbled, and carefully wobbled through the barrier. Breathe, I told myself. I had plenty of time. I just felt so jittery. I was relieved to have taken my seat at the window. After 20 minutes, the carriage was heaving. Bodies contorted, trying to get past one another. Bags were held aloft. The noise and the chaos were setting my nerves on edge. "You'll be fine." I could hear my sister's voice. She was always present in the background, the yin to my yang. I didn't feel fine. The journey passed slowly. Graffitied station walls gradually turned to city apartments. City apartments turned to blocks of flats. Blocks of flats turned to industrial buildings. Townhouses became villages, which became fields. "You'll be here soon enough." I could hear my sister's warm tone and I could imagine being back in our old room, lying on our bunks, playing vinyls and staring out at the floating clouds. As much as I yearned to be back there, the knot in my stomach got tighter if I let my mind drift as to why I was going. I closed my eyes. I pretended I wasn't stuck on a train surrounded by strangers. "Prince Charming! Prince Charming!" There she was, singing into her hairbrush with abandon. The pastel walls of our shared room plastered with posters of Adam and the Ants. Mum's thick red lipstick plastered on her lips. "Prince Charming!" "Girls!" My mum's face appeared, creased with laughter in the doorway. "Tea's ready!" And then it hit me. I bit my lip and tried really hard not to cry, but my shoulders were starting to shake. I could feel the wave of grief. I needed to let go, but not here, not stuck on a train, surrounded by strangers. So think about how this felt different, and I'm just going to highlight some of the things I've done differently. So I was saying, could we make it feel more intense by adding, rather than just saying I had a coffee in a bag, what about that would be stressful? I want to build this tension for this character. So scalding coffee, it could hurt someone. Wayward wheeled trolley. Well, if you've had a wheeled suitcase that's on wheels that doesn't behave itself, we could describe it as wayward. Wayward tends to be a way of describing a person who's gone off the rails and has become quite naughty. So the trolley isn't going where she wants, the coffee's hot, and she's trying to find her ticket. Now, to make it even, more stressful for her, impatient commuters, so people behind her getting annoyed and pushing, it just creates that feeling for her of stress. She wobbled through the barrier. Again, a bit of imagery just to show that she's a bit unsteady, and we can see that. And then we get the inner dialogue, and then she tells us that she's feeling jittery as well. Instead of just having the carriage was heaving and saying it was busy, well, let's do a bit of show. Bodies contorted. When you contort your body, you put it into strange shapes, trying to get past one another. So there's no space for people to get round. Everybody's crowded and pushing together. Bags were held aloft. Well, if your bag's held in the air, it's because there's no room on the floor for it. So if you've ever been on a really crowded train carriage, you see people trying to lift their bags up and put them overhead or pass them to one another over other people. And that feels quite claustrophobic, doesn't it? Instead of saying the journey passed slowly, a writer using a long list of sights just slows it down and makes us see the journey with the character. So we've got this long list of the sights on the train, and we've got the external, what she can see, versus what she's feeling inside. You'll be here soon enough. So we can tell that she's feeling sort of frustrated about how long it's taking, but at the same time, she's imagining her sister comforting her about that. So there's the internal contrasting the external. And then, as I was saying, wouldn't it be good to have a flashback just to bring her youth to life a little bit, her life at home with her sister and her mum? And so we've got the sister listening to Adam and the Ants, they're listening to music, singing along. And then we've got that feeling of with the dialogue of them all sort of having quite a happy time and quite a fun time together, and that warmth. Now, the reason that's useful is when we come back into the present and she's back on the train, and we see her bite her lip and we see her try not to cry, and we see physically with the imagery of her shoulders shaking that she's grieving. She's trying not to cry in the middle of a crowded train, but she's grieving and it's starting to come out. So we can infer from this that her mum's passed away, but we don't know for sure. So there's that sense there of grief, which people can understand and can relate to. So I hope you can see the difference as we've gone through and tried to improve this piece of writing from the beginning to the end. Now, I wonder which one you prefer, and I wonder why. I wonder which one you think would get higher marks for content, and that includes structure, such as paragraphing and order, and being imaginative, and SPAG, spelling, punctuation, and grammar. Which one do you think would do better, and why?